こんにちは、眠いロコです。What's up, guys? Hope you are doing well. Have you ever learned about ね、よ and よね? These are called sentence ending particles, and by adding them to the end of a sentence, you can express different nuances. A lot of people probably have felt something like this. Japanese people use them all the time, so I just use them too, but honestly, I don't really get the nuance differences. In this lesson, I want to talk about ね、よ and よね. I'll explain how textbooks describe them, and also share my own native speaker take on how they are actually used. I think today's video will include a lot of information you haven't heard before. Alright, let's jump into it. Let's start with ね. Actually, there are quite a lot of ways to use ね. There has been a lot of research on sentence ending particles, and according to one researcher, ね actually has 12 different uses. Today, I'll focus on the essential ones you really need to know. Okay, the first use is asking for agreement. It works like saying, right or isn't it? For example, 今日はすごくいい天気ですね。このケーキすごく美味しいね。今年の夏は暑いらしいね。And the second use is to express agreement, meaning you use ね when replying to someone who used ね to ask for agreement. For example, using the sentences from earlier, 今日はすごくいい天気ですね。そうですね。このケーキすごく美味しいね。うん、美味しいね。今年の夏は暑いらしいね。そうらしいね。If you answer with just そうです、そうだ or そうらしい without adding ね it sounds quite unnatural, so please be careful. The third use is for confirming something with the listener. This one also works like saying right or correct in English. You use this when you are almost completely sure, like 99% sure, but you just want to double check with the listener. For example, 田中さんですね。7時からのご予約でしたね。You can use ね or よ in both 敬語 using polite form and タメ口 using short form. But in my experience, this particular use is mostly hard with polite form. Because when you want to confirm something in casual speech, people usually use よね rather than ね. When I looked it up, I found other persons saying the same thing, so I guess that really is how it feels for Japanese speakers. For example, it sounds more natural to say 田中さんだよね rather than 田中さんだね. An important point is that, unlike the earlier usage, you do not respond with ね when the other person uses ね for confirmation. When someone says 田中さんですね, you would answer はい、そうです。Now let's move on to the next use. The fourth one is used when you make a comment about the listener. I think most people have never heard of this. The researcher I mentioned earlier calls this listener information reference, which means using ね when referring to information about the listener. Let's take an example. ミサちゃんは本当に頭がいいね。Here, you are speaking to Misa, not to other person. In this case, saying ミサちゃんは本当に頭がいい without ね sounds quite unnatural. Let's look at other examples. 先生は教えるのが上手ですね。部長は本当にビールがお好きですね。Did you get the hang of how to use it? The 4 uses we've covered so far are ones where leaving out ね would either change the meaning or make the sentence sound unnatural. But the last one is an optional ね that you can use or not use. The last one is ね you use when making a request or suggestion. Let's go through them one by one. First, you use ね when making a request together with てください or ないでください。For example, あのアニメぜひ見てくださいね。その牛乳、賞味期限が切れてるから飲まないでね。今度のパーティーには絶対来てね。Using ね or not doesn't change the meaning, but adding ね makes the sentence sound softer. Since it gives a calm vibe, it doesn't match urgent commands like 見て. For example, thinking about the example sentences earlier, you should say その牛乳飲まないで if the person is about to drink the milk. Next, when making a suggestion, you use ね together with ましょう or volitional form. We haven't covered the volitional form yet on this channel. For example, 20歳になったら一緒にお酒を飲みましょうね。じゃあ、また来週会おうね。This is another subtle point, but this usage is only used with let's do it sometime and not with let's do it now. For example, you can say 今度飲みに行こうね but you cannot say 今から飲みに行こうね These are the 5 main uses of ね If anyone wants to learn the remaining 7 uses as well, let me know in the comments. Next up, let's take a look at よ Some researchers say it has 3 uses, while others say it has 5. But here I introduce 2. The first use is when you use よ to tell the listener something they don't know. This is a use that's often explained in textbooks. It's used when you want to emphasize your own opinion about something the listener doesn't know. For example, あの映画を見ましたか? いえ、まだ見ていません。面白かったですよ。キットカットって美味しい？食べたことないの？美味しいよ。It can also be used when the listener hasn't noticed something. For example, 財布を落としましたよ。 ここは禁煙ですよ。Some textbooks say that using よ makes your tone stronger or rude or something like that, but I don't really agree. It really depends on how you say it. If you say, ここは禁煙ですよ, it can sound rather strong, but if you say, ここは禁煙ですよ, it actually feels pretty soft. So, yeah, there's no need to avoid using よ because of that, I think. The second use is when you use よ to respond to a request or suggestion. It's especially used when you are asked a question in forms like でもいいですか? or ませんか? For example, 明日仕事を休んでもいいですか? 大丈夫ですよ。この後カラオケ行かない? いいよ。In this situation as well, replying just 大丈夫です or いい without よ sounds unnatural. It's better to remember them as fixed phrases like いいですよ and 大丈夫ですよ。Lastly, let's take a look at よね。よね has two uses. One is for seeking agreement, and the other is for confirming something. You might be thinking, wait, didn't we hear this earlier? Right, the uses of よね overlap with those of ね. So you're probably like, okay, then what's the difference? Let's start with the confirmation use of よね. First, as I mentioned earlier, よね is more commonly used with short forms. For example, ミーティングは10時からだよね. Also, the degree of certainty differs between ね and よね. With ね, you're almost 100% sure. But with よね, it's around 90%. So, よね feels more like you're actually checking with the listener. For example, 田中さんですよね。先輩も明日の飲み会行きますよね。Now, let's see how it's different from ね when you are asking for agreement. Actually, I looked into the difference between the two, but I couldn't find any sources that explain it clearly. So from here on, it's totally just my own take. Sorry in advance if I'm wrong. The first difference is this. For general or widely known information, you use よね. And for things the listener has personally experienced, you use ね. This distinction can explain the example sentences found in Genki. It says like this. サラリーマンは大変だね. I see that you are very tired. Working for a company is tough, I guess, said by a student to an office worker. サラリーマンは大変だよね. Working for a company is tough, isn't it? Typically, a comment made between students or office workers. So when you want to say something like, generally speaking, working for a company is tough, you know, you use よね. Let's look at other examples. 赤ちゃんはかわいいよね。日本の食べ物はおいしいよね。 And the second difference is this. When you talk about your own experiences, you use よね for things that some time has passed since you experienced. When thinking about the difference between ね and よね, I considered what kinds of situations each one is used in. And then I realized that, like right after finishing a movie with someone, you don't say 面白かったよね. Since not much time has passed after watching the movie, 面白かったね feels way more natural. However, a few days later, when you are talking with the person you watched the movie with, saying あの映画面白かったよね sounds natural. So, when you are talking about something in the past, you can use よね. So, does that mean you can't use ね when talking about past events? Not at all. Honestly, I think either one is fine. In this case, I don't really feel any difference between あの映画面白かったね and あの映画面白かったよね. Let's take a look at another example. 納豆を食べてみたんだけど、美味しいね。ああ、美味しいよね。In this case, B has eaten natto in the past, and they are remembering that experience when they say 美味しいよね. If B says 美味しいね here, it kind of sounds like they're both eating natto right now. Since B had eaten natto earlier than A, I assumed they were using よね to reflect that time gap. This is my own guess though. Anyway, that's the explanation of ね, よ, and よね. Great job today! And thank you so much for watching until the end. Today's video might have been a bit tough. I'd be really happy if today's lesson helped your Japanese learning. If you liked it, share it with your friends who are studying as well. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye bye!